Hello. Hello, this is U.S. Immigration Attorney Sharifa Tharpe. I'm here live to take your U.S. immigration related questions. Put your questions in the comments now so that I can answer your questions. I have a great topic for you today. So let's talk about asylum today. There is a misconception out there that one has to go through the border to apply for asylum. And I'll tell you a story. So I once met someone who said that they had their visa. So at first, I usually start by asking, how is it they entered, in what way they entered the country, and they came through the border. Of course, they were allowed to come through the border, but the way that they entered the country, it usually it's for people that don't have their visas to legally enter the country. However, this person told me that they thought they would have a higher chance of being approved for asylum if they just came through the border without using their visa. This person had a visa to enter the United States, but because I guess because of the media coverage and because of all the talk that goes on about asylum at the border, they completely pushed their visa to the side and entered the country without the visa. So here they were, they entered the country. They were not given official admission because the officer that was not given the visa. And so she entered in that way, which makes it a lot harder because she was not formally admitted into the country. She was allowed to come in pending removal proceedings. So when she came in that way, she actually put herself in removal proceedings, right? Because she did not enter with her visa. She entered without the visa. And she thought that that was going to get her asylum. And it only got her in removal proceedings. She still has a chance to present her asylum case, but she's going to be under a lot of stress doing that because she has to go before an immigration judge. And if she does not prove her case, it means she will be removed, right? So, the point of my story here that I want to make clear is that you do not have to come through the border. If you have your legal means to get to the United States, you can use those means to get here and then apply for asylum. You do not need to enter the country through the border and pretend as if you don't have a visa, right? Because that is not going to get you an advantage. Let me make this very clear. Sometimes I hear a lot of people who are disgruntled about all these people coming through the border. Let me tell you this: a very, very, very small number of those people are going to get to have a legal path to stay here. A lot of people who are coming through the border are here with very little resources and very few pathways to gain legal status, including asylum. Just by being Latin does not mean that they've been approved for asylum. It means that they're being referred to immigration court to be removed unless they can show that they qualify for asylum. So, coming through the border does not give you any advantages, and it can be a very miserable, alienating experience, especially for those who are coming here with no resources, no family members, and no pathway to legal status. And now they have to look at the very, very hard task of applying for asylum. So, if you have other means to get here, use those means to get here, and you still have the ability to apply for asylum. You can come here with your visa And based on your fears, apply for asylum. Based on your fear of returning to your home country, you can apply for asylum. So don't think that this is something you cannot do if you came into the country with your visa or came in through other means other than the border. Let's talk about that though, right? What does it mean to apply for asylum? Because um, there are other rumblings about what asylum is. And so I also want to make that clear. And if you can relate in any way to anything I'm going to say today, give us a call. Let's talk. So asylum doesn't mean that things are hard in your country, so you can just apply for asylum here, right? If it's hard economically, just because it's hard right now, no jobs, that is not a proper basis for asylum. So that's one. However, if you are in fear of returning to your country, if say you came here on your, I mean, even if you came here through the border, but if you came here with a visa, came here through legal means, through other legal means, like you came with your visa, you came on the visa waiver program, however you entered the country and you were inspected and admitted, if you have a fear at that point of returning to your home country because you fear a threat, you are being targeted, right? And when I say targeted, you're being threatened with violence, you're being threatened with being killed, you're being threatened with incarceration, you're being threatened with detainment. That is what's considered persecution. So if you are in fear of persecution because you have experienced persecution in the past, or you have a good reason to know, a good reason to know that persecution will happen in the future, then you can apply for this if that fear or that persecution is based on, and I have it on the screen right here, that fear has to be based on that persecution, the threats you're facing, the violence you're facing, the incarceration you're facing, it, or even the extreme economic oppression has to be based on race, religion, nationality, your social group, your particular social group, and we'll talk about that in a minute, or your political opinion. It doesn't have to just be where you are afraid of going back to your country because you have a political opinion. That's just one of them. It could be any one of those where you fear returning to your country because you're going to be targeted based on any one of those. Now, the broadest one here, the broadest category here out of race, religion, nationality, social group, and political opinion is the social group, right? That is where if you fall within a social group that is being targeted, you're being targeted, that means you're being persecuted, you're being targeted with threats of violence, incarceration, maybe extreme economic oppression, because and that economic oppression is because of your group, the group that you're a part of, then you can qualify for asylum. Social group could be any group, any definable group, right? It is, we have ways, depends on case law, depends on a number of different criteria, but the social group, if it's an identifiable social group, it has characteristics where the members of that group share similar characteristics, then it can be considered a particular social group. And if you're being targeted based on the characteristics of that social group, you could qualify for asylum. Now, some examples of a particular social group would be if, in cases where women are subjected to mutilation, so genital mutilation in some countries. They belong to a particular social group of women or young girls who are being targeted because they have reached the age where they're going to do this cruel tradition. And in that case, they can fall within a particular social group. And so people have fled to avoid this happening to them. And if you fled to the United States, you can apply for this. Another example of a social group would be if you're being targeted because of your sexual orientation, you identify as part of the LGBTQ community, and you're being targeted because of that. This can be considered a particular social group. And social groups, it's broad. So when I am talking to individuals, when I'm talking to my clients, I listen to what is happening to them, why they're being targeted, and are they being targeted because of, at the end of the day, they belong to a group that as a whole is being targeted in that particular country. So, for example, in a country in Central America, you had women who were in relationships, marriages, who could not leave the marriages because they were subjected to domestic violence, but they could not leave the marriages because they were not protected by the government and protected against domestic violence. That is defined as a particular social group. So it's, if you did not hear me, if you belong to a social group, but you didn't hear me mention that social group, it does not mean that you don't qualify for this. This is where it does take definitely some legal analysis to decide whether where you are, why you're being targeted is based on how you identify. And if you identify as part of a particular social group. So keep that in mind. Another type of social group, for example, are young men who have reached the age where they're about to be initiated into a gang, and they have to either choose to join the gang or die. That is a part that those young men who are being targeted for initiation into a gang, who are refusing to join the gang, who will be faced with death because they've refused to join the gang, could be is an example of a particular social group. So it shows that this. I just want to let you know how broad this is, and it depends on your particular circumstances. Now, so here's what I say is if you are here in the US now and you don't want to go back, you really feel as if it is a matter of life and death. It's a matter of your safety and well-being, if to stay here in the US because you fear you're being targeted specifically. Let's talk, and let's talk about what the situation is and determine whether asylum is for you. Now, with asylum is so important to hear me out here because this is where people lose the opportunity to apply for asylum. So here we go. You have up to 1 year after your entry into the United States to apply for this. No matter how you entered the US, you have 1 year on up to 1 year after your entry. If you miss this deadline, it's going to get a lot harder for you to succeed in your asylum claim. So don't wait, right? If from the minute you know you cannot return and you need help to stay here and seek asylum, get on it. This is not a type of application, by the way, that you should be waiting last minute for, because we have to definitely build a case for you. We have to understand the facts. We have to understand your country conditions. We have to understand your particular social group, if it's based on a particular social group or your situation. How are you being persecuted? We have to gather documentation to build a strong case here. So don't wait, because it does take a lot of work. Now, if you miss the deadline, is there still a way to prevail here? Because they're supposed to deny it unless you can show two things, one of two things, at least one of two things. So, one is you can show that extraordinary circumstances caused the delay in you submitting the application within a reasonable amount of time after the deadline. So you want to make sure that if, say, for example, you face some major things in your life. You came here, say you were fleeing from a situation, you came here, and then you faced additional issues, maybe illness, maybe a death of a family member, maybe other circumstances that were equally severe to you. That could be an example of an extraordinary circumstance that prevented you from applying within the deadline. But keep in mind that they still do require that you apply within a reasonable time as soon as you're able to. So you want to make sure that you make sure that you are on top of it, right? Um, it gets harder though, because as you can see, I listed some very severe type of extraordinary circumstances. Not sickness as in you had the flu for 1 week, so you didn't apply. Sickness as in a major sickness, or major sickness, your sickness, or a family member's sickness that prevented you because it really was one of those all consuming situations that took your attention away from applying for this. And the other would be deaths. So keep that in mind. The other one is change in circumstances. So say you were here, and then say a day after the year passed, you say a big war broke out, and you found out that everyone who shared your political opinion, who was very active on the political scene as you were being incarcerated or killed or threatened with violence. That's a change in circumstances. What if there was a big coup, and somehow you had a credible fear of being caught up in that coup in your country because of maybe your political opinion? That's an example of changed circumstances that could explain why you didn't apply within that 1 year time period after your entry. So give me a call and let us get started. What about someone who files a frivolous asylum case after being in the country for 4 years? So I do want to, yes, definitely want to mention this. Now, I have been hearing of scammers they convince immigrants that asylum is this easy process. Just pick a topic and go with it, run with it. You get your work permit and you get to live for a couple of years in the US. And, they make it even sound like you will succeed on the asylum. At the end of those years, I can tell you it will not be worth it, because that's considered not only, I mean, if you pick a topic that's not true, you make up a topic that's not true, submit your application just so that you can get the work permit. Then it comes time for your interview. They find this out. Guess what's going to happen? Permanent. They're going to put you in deportation and permanent bar from getting anything else, right? From getting your green card. There is severe penalties for this. So don't do it, right? Don't apply for the asylum just to get the work permit. It's not there for that. And they are very good at identifying this. This is a very tedious process. And when at that interview, they will get to the bottom of this. I have seen, for example, some people um, have done things like faked their orientation, their sexual orientation, and then they get in deeper into problems because they do that, which is fraud. It's major fraud here, um, which is very severe. But then they do that, and then guess what happens? While they're waiting for their asylum to come through, they really meet a US citizen, for example, they fall in love, and they're gonna get married, but the person they marry is a complete opposite from what they said they were in the asylum filing. So there you go, right? They said they're they're gay, but then they marry someone of the opposite sex. And as a result of that, you are in a situation where that fraud is going to emerge, because now you have to explain this. Why is it that you have on your asylum that you are in fear of persecution based on your orientation, but then you do otherwise in your real life? And it say in the past you have a couple of kids already, and then you go forward and still marry someone of the opposite sex. Now you have dug yourself into a hole. So it's that thing where you start with one lie and you end up having to tell more and more and more and more lies until you just can't keep up with the lies anymore. So don't do it. It's not worth it. And as I said before in the example that I gave you, where you're here and you're here for maybe a couple of years, you end up facing different circumstances. You get married, different things happen in your life. Maybe a new law comes up that then helps you to qualify for amnesty here. And you didn't have to tell one lie to get there, right? So just keep that in mind. The penalties are very severe. So don't let those scammers out there present you with a list of topics and then tell you to pick and choose which topic you're going to use for the asylum, because you'll be happy in about 6 months when you get the not the green card, when you get the work permit, you'll be happy. But then it's going to get a lot worse, right? Because when it's time for them to make the decision on the asylum, or you find another option, another way out to get your status, but now you have to disclose that you committed asylum fraud, immigration fraud to get the work permit, to get the asylum, you're in big trouble at that point. So, just make sure you keep that in mind. All right. Oh my gosh. So I went on and on and on, and I usually love to answer your questions. So I'm going to quickly try to at least answer a few questions, and then I'm going to come back tomorrow, and I'm only going to focus on your questions tomorrow. So if I didn't get to your questions today, join me tomorrow where I can answer questions. Um, all right. So let me go ahead and I'm going to answer. What is the approval rate for the T visa? So right now, based on the FOIA, it's 80%. For the T visas, 80%. Now, what I always say here, that's very high. And for our office, we're very good at presenting our clients T visa applications. But what I have to say here is I never can give 100% guarantees. And if any attorney ever gives 100% guarantee, anybody gives you 100% guarantee, run in the other direction, because it's probably a scam. So, as an ethical attorney, I can never guarantee you results. But what I can say is the approval rating right now is 80% for the T visa. And our office has experienced a much higher. So, at this time, we have been very fortunate to have um, all approvals so far for the T visa. Knock on wood, we keep the fight going, and that continues because we do make sure that we present strong cases to the immigration service to get such a high approval rating. But I do want to have the disclaimer there that current results that we have does not mean that it's going to be the same in your case. That's why we continue to do evaluations and we continue to screen and before we present cases to the Immigration Service. So give us a call and let us get started on your T visa application. All right. Okay, so my case of asylum got dismissed in court. So can I do an appeal to open the case, or should I file the new case of asylum as in the future I have applied for cancellation? So you have a lot going on here. Give us a call. Right now, they do have a special procedure to reapply for the asylum if they dismissed it in court. So there is a way, a path to keep your asylum case going, even though they dismissed it in court, which means that you can now apply for an affirmative asylum, which is less stressful than the court case. So give us a call. Let's talk about your case first, and then get started. Hello, do we do EB3? So EB3 is employment based. Yes, absolutely. As long as an employer you do qualify, give us a call. Let's talk about what your goals are as an employer and what do you want to do regarding sponsorship of an employee, and we can advise and move forward there. All right. I am a visitor to the US and wish to apply for work permit and green card. So, being a visitor does not mean that you get entitlement to the green card or the work permit. We really do need to evaluate your situation and see how you qualify. If you really want to know, give us a call, schedule an appointment. Right now, we're filling up. So it's me, and we have another attorney Bria, on board, who does give the same evaluations as me. And so her schedule right now, I am till March. The attorney, her schedule is open for bookings. If you don't want to wait until March, you can also go with her. And we work very closely on case evaluations. But do it quickly because her schedule is filling up quickly as well. All right, guys, I that's gonna be it for me today. I have to go, but I'm gonna be back and tell you what. Tomorrow, I'm just gonna focus on questions. So please go ahead, save your questions, and join me tomorrow. Usually, I'm late today. Usually, the time that I come on is between 12 and 1, around 12:30. So please look out for me and ask your question again tomorrow. All right. Thanks so much, everyone. See you tomorrow. Bye bye.